FrontLine Chat with Harry Tangye and Dave Wardell.
And we're back in the room. Oh, I see that. I see that book coming in.
I'm up playing you already with a bit of thin and then for that.
Hey. Yeah, you can't outdo me, mate. A couple of weeks. Has it been 2 or 3 weeks? It's been 3 weeks altogether.
It feels like forever, mate. And you've been off the radar. You've been super busy. So,
Yeah, you say that, but you've been super busy because I've just asked you, and you yawning earlier, and then you said, yeah, because I got about 4 hours sleep last night.
Yeah, that was my fault. My fault and red wine, that was.
Red wine. Yeah. No, it's been... Welcome, everyone. Thank you for turning up. Look, 674 already. It's whacking up through that. Hello, everyone. Everyone's saying... Good, yeah, Tracy. Thank you very much. Hi, Dave, Harry, and Finn. I thought it just said Dave and Finn there for a minute. I would have gone off and sulked. Hey, welcome anyway, mate. Welcome.
Are you allowed to tell us what you've been doing or not?
Yeah. I can do it. I was very careful.
I've been super busy.
So I was phoned up.
Clever things.
I know. Yeah, well, it wasn't. But I was phoned up at home, and they said, and it was a room, and it was Ollie Taylor was there as well, and luckily Ollie said Ollie said, oh, hi Harry, and normally I say, right, whatever, beep, 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 beep. And it was lucky I didn't, because it was a room full of superintendents. Anyway, the next thing, I was just brought in for 6 weeks to deal with a certain aspect. Mine was the outer checkpoints, validation certificates, just to get those going. They had been looked at considerably in the past, but of course these things were developing. It was a very, very complicated thing, the G7, in a place which just didn't have the infrastructure for it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a bit exciting on the first. It was basically some of the things I've been sort of involved in slightly in the past, but it was quite just see my brother Geren in Norway. Still doesn't know I do FrontLine. I should have heard him. He's rang here before, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
He's on a boat in a field somewhere. That's what he does. He's a teacher in Norway.
Meanwhile, Harry's been keeping the world turning, haven't you, mate? I mean, it sounded so complicated what you were doing. I'm surprised they asked you. I mean, well done.
I know. I was surprised. Well, I tell you what, there was this big Devon and Cornwall barrel, and at the bottom of that very empty barrel was my phone number, and they were like, Really?
Well,
is there nobody else?
He's away on holiday, so you better try Harry. Not that it's not fingers. Crikey, I didn't mean that like
that. Is there absolutely no one else? So, but I will show you. I've got some little pretty holiday snaps for you. I've got, there we go. Yeah, few photos. These were the Explode dogs just before we saw the red arrows. That was very fun. And then I want to show you, there was here's a sort of story. This was, count how many vehicles in here in this. So how many vehicles? This is certain American presidents. And this is his entourage, right? So, okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll allow you to count all the others.
There's the beast.
There's
the beast.
There's the beast. I think the front of the convoy got to its destination before the back of it had left.
Oh my goodness.
The previous one. I mean, this little Carbis Bay, it's hilarious. The power's like, the Americans love to show power.
There's the one that got all the sneaky beaky stuff in it as well. Oh, there's all sorts.
Yeah, all the sneakies got surgery. Well, then, very quickly, I just add, right. So then they were coming to see me because I was giving a talk at G7, right? So after I'd given my talk at G7, they all left, having been filled with wisdom. Anyway, so I'm videoing this, right? This is just by I'm videoing this, and the Secret Service man you'll see. Very quickly. Right. And you'll see the security man telling me off now, telling me to get back. You can see I'm climbing the hedge.
Stuck him in the nettles.
And
Your
then,
deployment is in the nettles. Get in there.
And exactly. Well, then very finally, this is what happens just in front of me, which was quite an experience because all my work here was done. This was like, we'd had 17-hour days, like 5 hours sleep or whatever. Yeah, you can have 17 and 5. That's fine. And this is what turned up. So he turns up, and you'll see him. Those soldiers either side were lovely guys, and they stopped and had their photos taken with some police officers, the few hours beforehand. So they were really nice. And you can see him coming out the back, and then walking his way to the steps there. But I'll stop it once he just shows. You'll see him. I mean, this entourage, the beast, the ospreys there were phenomenal. You can see, now they see it's clear. Of course, there he is. And
oh my goodness. So cool.
Yeah, and then he disappears in. And just take that sound a minute. I'll just cut that sound off. Yeah, so it was pretty impressive. And there he goes. I mean, the day before, we had some sort of semi-secret destinations they're going, but to be honest, there's only a few that they can go into in Cornwall that are pretty obvious. And the Ospreys and the Sea Kings just circled and then practiced landing at each destination. We were trying to keep remotely secret, so sort of blew it away, to be honest.
Yeah,
but so that was.
I did see some clips of them practicing landing on St Michael's Mount a couple of times. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, but the weather came in. They didn't do it in the end. It was such a shame.
Right. Oh no.
But let's get this in.
Once in a lifetime stuff.
Reading this.
Well done.
Look, I'm getting through it. I'm loving it. It's the human side. John Nichol.
This guy is an absolute legend, isn't he? Wonderful.
He's been on it.
And his books are just amazing. Whether you're into this sort of thing or not, the way he writes books is just incredible. So he's got a whole series of a whole host of books. I can't remember how many titles he's up to now. Must be up to like 16 books.
I know.
There we go. There's another one. Lancaster as well. He's got Lancaster.
I'm hoping he's doing one on Ford Cortina one day for a bit of nostalgia.
Of course. Mine and Harry's signed, really, because we're buddies with John. But I recommend this book. It only came out, I think, last week, was it, or this week?
Yeah,
absolutely
last week.
Wonderful. Obviously, he was the navigator in one of these in a tornado. So it, as all his books are, it comes from the heart, and it's just an incredible read. He's got some of his bits on the back when he was taken prisoner of war in the Gulf War. So yeah, thoroughly recommend you guys go and grab. I mean, just some of the pictures in the book are just phenomenal. Absolutely, can't recommend this book or any of his books enough.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Cody Sue Sam. Yeah, has secret places in Cornish pie. No, Cornish pie shop, no, but Cornish pasty shops, yes. Come on, get it right. I like to say I nearly ran out of this stuff. Countess Grey, Fortnum & Mason's Loose Tea, but fortunately I've got another one and another one spare, so I'm all right with that. You know me and my Countess Grey tea. I had some backups. Right, he's going to wonder what is coming on.
No, before he comes on, I just want to mention that he actually put a post up earlier, a couple of days ago, which is, really quite important. It was about the Christian Eriksen, the footballer who collapsed on the field and needed CPR. and our guest Andy, Sir, he put a post up about the importance of CPR, and anybody who's never trained in it or is thinking about doing it, absolutely do it. I had a guy collapse literally right in front of me, and I was able, because I'm trained and I've been trained for a very long time, to commence CPR straight away. And they found, that if that hadn't have happened as instantly as it had, if he'd only waited a couple more minutes for someone else to come along and do it, he wouldn't be alive today. So the more of us that know how to do CPR, the better. And obviously Christian Eriksen, because he got instant care, is sat up alive and well, and I think probably getting sent home soon. So yeah, CPR. Andy,
brilliant. And it's so good. CPR, if you keep this statistic in mind, is that if you see someone literally drop on the street and they basically look dead, they look grey and ashen and horrible, they lose 20% chance of life every minute. So every minute dawdling, that's 20%, another 20%, another 20%. And the chances are, I did CPR twice, one successful, one not so successful. But unfortunately, I learned very recently from someone in a shop that he'd been successful another time in ending his life. So that was a bit sad. So, but there we go. At least the opportunity was given. Should we get Andy on?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. Here's Andy. I don't normally throw people on like that, but Andy, really, really welcome. Thank you very much. The reason I've got you on, and we decided, is that a few people, Sophia Can, publicist that I know very well, said you've got to get Andy on. Have you got him on? And Jeremy Vine seems to rate you for some reason, so we'll sort of find out why. But tell me, Andy, Dave, Andy, and tell me, how did it all start? What got you into policing from the start? Right from the beginning.
Yourself first, though. Unmute yourself first because you're muted.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Oh, we're still muted.
Oh,
hang on, you're still muted. I don't know why. It might try taking your earphones out or something. Have you got earphones in?
We could hear him earlier.
Yeah, came on.
Can you hear me now?
We'll figure it out.
Yay!
Oh, that's it. Great, beauty. Yeah, that's
great.
Good.
All right, fantastic. Right, chaps, thank you so much for having me on. It's a really popular show, so it's great to have this opportunity really to hear. So why did I join policing? The honest answer is I kind of fell into it. So it wasn't necessary. It was either going to be the military or police, I suppose. I wasn't good enough to make it as a sportsman, so I had to do something. I suppose that was quite competitive. It felt like a good, but it's been a great. I've been in it since '99. I think when they reel me out towards the end of my career, I'll be one of the last people, in policing that will say I'm in the previous century. So it's 22 years now, so it's been great fun.
What did you want to do when you joined? Because obviously you've
I can't hear you, Dave. I don't know.
Oh, hello.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me
now, Dave? It took a little while to come through. I think I can hear both. Yeah, I've got you both.
So, what did you do? Why did you join? What did you want to do? What did you want to become? Obviously, you've reached some heady heights now, and you've been involved in some very important things along the way. But what were your aims when you first joined?
So, initially, it was just to be good at the job, I suppose, and try and be a really good beat PC. I think quite proactive as a PC, so made a load of arrests, was involved in lots of sort of stop checks and worked on burglary squads and robbery teams and so on. So I was very, very fortunate early on. But I really quickly wanted to be a detective. And I suppose if you're looking into it long term, I probably wanted to investigate murder and be that Jack Frost type stuff. And I got there relatively quick, so it's like, well, okay, what else am I going to do? So, and as you know, it moves on to being in the end, our passion is road policing. But there's obviously lots of steps along there to sort of get there. But I think for that murder investigation is such a responsible role, I suppose that's the aspiration. And then once I'd got there, it was how do I then sort of look at other things that save life? And I think obviously, when we come on to road safety, no doubt, that's the out there currently, isn't it, in terms of policing?
Did you spend time as a road policing cop, or did the detective role take you there eventually? How did that come about?
Yeah, so the detective role took me there, really. So I was saying to Harry, I think yesterday, that when I got the phone call to say, congratulations, you're promoted, I also got in the same call, you're going to go and work in Spec Ops, which is, it's basically roads and firearms. And I'd never held a gun, and I hadn't issued too many traffic tickets, so it was a bit of a surprise in posting. But he did say you're going to really enjoy it, and you'll find ways to sort of make it different and avenues and be a little bit different than perhaps I'd had before. He's right, because obviously when that was in Northamptonshire of 2012, so that's my first experience to road police, superintendent of Northamptonshire. I know there's, and I still live in Northamptonshire, so there's a road I go down now, which is really a visual reminder of my role in there, because we changed the road, a much safer road, and I was really influential in terms of in highways and other sort of partner agencies to change the layout because people were dying there. And it's like real, it was quite, I always feel that, and it was a role that I didn't expect before I went in there, but it was absolutely fascinating, very much problem solving, and thinking differently. And what's often lost about, as you two know really well, but what's often lost about road policing is it's tackling crime. I think, so I always say tackling crime, protecting life. And I think when you draw those two together, it's really strong, but so often probably some people probably look narrowly around, it's this, it's that, but actually it's about protecting life and tackling criminality. And I think when you get those two pulled successfully together, that's when you can really have a big impact.
It was sort of it sort of drew sort of parallels, everything but the rank, is because basically when I was just for the public listening, is basically that investigation into road death became very professional, and because they took the road death investigation manual, which was a cheerful document, bedside reading, and they made it, they took it from the murder manual. And so basically what you do, you investigate it in a way that you sort of cancel out, okay, can we show that it's not murder or manslaughter? Can we show that wasn't the road conditions, the weather conditions? Was it distraction? Or what? Okay, we can cancel that. What have we left? What have we actually left here? And what evidence is to show that? And if you think about it, you've got as many victims as with a murder. You've got as many potentially witnesses, perhaps, and perhaps even those just as many people who need to be brought for justice. And yet it was said at the time, well, you're lucky if you get 2 cops with allowed hours on your card compared to a murder investigation, which was an incident card, an incident room. Then so that was, and then now it's the APP. It's different manuals, but you can sort of see how the two are very similar. And I can see how, Andy, what you were the same. Where I gave tickets out like confetti. I never enjoyed it, and then I did this learn to live, this preventative thing. And you're in the position now where you can make very good differences. What are the sort of main differences that you would like change if you could press a magic button?
Yeah, so if I talk about maybe in policing circles, maybe talk a bit wider than that. So I think if I go all the way back to my Northamptonshire role,
nope.
At the time,
Andy's
okay. Yeah, so I seem to keep going mute and then unmute for some reason, but basically, so in Northamptonshire, when I went in 2012, 100-day look at how's it work, went to meet the officers and teams and so on, and they felt they had been judged hugely on the amount of tickets. So their primary real focus was to go out. And when I sort of said, well, where are you issuing your tickets, what are your tickets about, is that sort of reduction of killed and serious injury collisions or tackling criminality. And the truth is, I think it was about numbers and it was about tickets. We all could talk for ages around sort of culture around target driven, but I switched off all the targets. I was no longer counting how many tickets we were issuing. The only target I was going to count was basically how many killed and serious injury collisions judged against if that was reduced. It didn't really get believed. They didn't really believe me initially. And I had to keep doing briefings to say, no, genuinely, I've switched it all off and I'm not interested in how many numbers you're doing. It's about where you're patrolling, what you're focused on, and killed and serious, essentially. So, and we switched that off, and I had a massive surge in terms of tackling uninsured. So I wanted dangerous drivers essentially off the road. And there's lots to back up why uninsured drivers are more dangerous and more criminally active in other crime than the average driver who is insured. So was a good move to make. So basically what I'm saying is all the way back then, and that reduction in KSI, we had our lowest year in years and years and years at that point. And our other crime level knock-on impact, because I think we were using ANPR really successfully, and we were starting to tackle the criminal through their vehicle. And we all know that tackling the offender sometimes is far easier through stopping them, because it's stops criminality and so on. For me, and there's lots of other things we did, but that was the start of thinking really, that then when I go into London, it's very much about predictive policing. So, but you need really, really strong data. I think coming back to your bespoke, your actual question, is really, really strong data. We currently use something called Stats 19, which I know you will understand, but that means we record the contributory factors of basically fatal collisions based on the first assessment. And I want it to be the last assessment, because the first assessment so much, so that could not sit, whereas the last assessment, we know that is after everything that's gone on, the investigation, we spoke to all the witnesses, we've had the forensic collision teams look at it, we've analysed CCTV, whatever it may be, we got to the end of investigation point, we know what the contributory factor is in the fatal, whereas at the start we probably don't. So if we had better data, we'd understand what the causes are much better chance of disrupting that. So good data then leads to predictive policing. So what I'd like us to do is be far more led around where the killers seem to be preparing, putting our resources there, problem solving that. And undoubtedly, when I unpick everything, speed for me is by far the most. So if you then know where the patrolling and you patrol those roads and you problem solve those roads in partnership with lots of different people, you need to obviously identify what your themes are. And I know from when I classed Stats 19 to London, certainly speed was by far, and I think that would be replicated around the country. And it's not just above the speed limit, it's also driving at a speed. It's about 2/3 over the speed limit and 1/3 not condition, or too fast for the condition. And obviously within the limit in that scenario. But knowing your themes, so knowing the roads, knowing the themes, and target the most dangerous drivers as well.
Yeah. So
we know that once you, sorry.
No, I was going to say, look, very, very different. But when we're talking about dog training, if a dog has an issue with a certain thing, we talk about control and management. We talk about, taking away the opportunity for a dog to rehearse that unwanted behaviour. And of course, that's what you're talking about potentially with some of your programs. We've got a road here that used to be very, very, very well known, still is, in the biking community. And every year they used to lose 2 or 3 people on it. Well, since they've changed lots of things about it, put in many more double white lines, width restrictors, and new 40 and 30 mile an hour speed limits along that road, I can't remember the last time we had a death. So it must be like coming at it from lots of different angles. I saw a post you did the other day where someone was implying that the reason people speed is because there isn't as many police cops around, and you were saying, well, actually, yeah, some of that it is that, but actually we need to take responsibility for our own actions. So denying people the ability to do that, and you've spoken about manufacturers and all that sort of stuff as well. It's kind of a multi-prong approach, isn't it?
Yeah, because then, as you know, like that, I did the run for road piece, and back end of that, I did a call to action. And the call to action basically, because I don't think there's enough leadership across the whole of, so look, policing is just a part of this, isn't it? When you think 1,800 people a year, which is about 5 a day, and about 60 people are seriously injured, so 5 a day die and 60 are seriously injured on the roads. That's amazing that we don't have the country. It's really hard to get any media focus on it. Often it's where is the sort of political leadership around it? Where's the leadership across the sector? Isn't a huge amount, to be frank. So within the call to action, I've asked for an MP to read out the names of everyone that died the previous year. So if we think about a comparison to that, Jeff Phillips, who did woman and girl who'd been murdered the previous year, had huge media attention. It had then lots of activity that we're all getting, and rightly so. I mean, that's absolutely the right thing to do, but we're all getting lots of activity to take forward now because of that. And I'd like somebody else to do that for road So safety, because it does get So that was just one thing. But then there was looks at exceptional hardship defence, which is a shocker, isn't it? We all know. I mean, we have lots of people who drive over, who've got more points in their licence and have been allowed to drive because they've said to the court, do you know what, if I lose my licence, this is the impact of my personal circumstance, whether it's the loss of my family are going to be affected, I can't take my kids to school. But my excuse is, my belief is they've had sufficient chance to alter their driving behaviour before they get that point. The 12 point allows people that opportunity. And the problem is, when the court so often allow that hardship defence, you know, and I know people that have been hardship defence that then go on to kill because they're driving dangerously. You know, but the more importantly, where is the victim's voice in that? So where is the consideration in that defence being allowed that says actually you're a risk to road users, and actually I've got to be on the side of families, and I've also got to be on the side of putting safety first. So I think we need to get rid of things like the exceptional hardship. You mentioned manufacturers. We talk a lot. What about absolute safety? So, you know, dash cam could be fitted as standard. Insurers could incentivize things like dash cam and speed limiters and boxes, and everything makes people drive safe. One of the really big things I'm pushing, obviously, is this public reporting of road crime. So I think, and I'm very close with MPCC, kind of announcing, I think, also taking a more nationally consistent approach to this. But, you know, so public reporting of road crime, of course, is like things like dash cam and head cam. I think when you get all 43 in England and Wales, but it'd be good to see Scotland on board as well. So I say 44 for now. The UK basically consistent with this. You'll have, instead of the dangerous driver who I'm convinced looks for the police car, where's the speed camera? And if they see neither, they think they can drive over their line. But once you have that knowledge that if dash cam footage or head cam footage to the police, then there will be some action considered and taken where needed. You'd have then 24/7, 365 days, because the police can't be everywhere all the time, but the public can, basically, that principle. I think that will have a big deterrent impact.
I just want to cover one of Andy's points, because Andy broke up a little bit. So he was saying about the hardship defence. So people will go to court having committed some really very nasty and very serious road traffic offences, and their defence to losing their licence will be, you know, say for instance, I'm a plumber or whatever, and I need my vehicle to get around, I need my vehicle to get to my job, and quite often the courts will say that's fine, you can keep your licence. And they'll go above the 12 points that all of us are allowed to have before we get disqualification. I think, wasn't it the report you put up was something like this, 46 drivers or something in the UK with more than 30 points on their license, with more than 2.5 times the maximum amount of points that anybody is allowed to have, and they're still driving. Now, they don't give these points away like confetti.
But you've been in court. So we've been in court, haven't we, Dave, where we've seen, you know, and I know, and we've seen these people, how they act, and they put the big V's up to the system, laugh at the system, go out there, and then they're in court and they're saying, oh, look, I'm really, if I lose my job, and look at this smallest baby I've got, that's going to starve if I don't get, and it's down to you, if you have the power to, and I promise you I'll never do it again, never again. And because those magistrates just see one side of the story all the time, they just see the person who is, it's terrible, terrible. It's a very difficult, you'd have to almost be quite hard in order to just have one-sided information come in, not have it balanced with the other side when you're walking through a scene of death and devastation, and them still continuing that way. And you could see how it happens. I think there's a problem with the system there. They don't tend to come out with this because they like to be independent, but they're not being independent. Magistrates aren't. They need to see the other side of it, and the side where probationers and all this sort of thing, and then get some sort of, you know, genuine sort of, so they can see.
Like Andy said, that these people that then leave the court chuckling, jump in their car and carry on because there was no punishment. And as another thing that Andy has been doing is sort of saying, well, where's the victim's say in all of this? Where's the victim's family if the victim's no longer, alive or whatever? Where's their say in the fact that these people can just walk off scot-free? I went to an accident once where a guy had killed a kid. He was late for his solicitor's appointment for another serious thing that he was going to court with, and the child was on the road dead. All he was worried about was, could he go? Can I go now? You've got all my details. I need to go and get this appointment. He didn't care. He'd killed a child. I mean, mental. So Andy, sorry, carry on. Your work about getting the victims involved and the victims' families involved. How's that? What's that about?
Chaps, just taking it just a step back. Okay. So you rightly highlighted there, like the magistrate's culture, but that's societal culture, isn't it? Because at the moment, what we're seeing is they don't think it's crime. So you'll get a burglar go before a magistrate, or you'll get somebody that's doing 160 mile an hour, for example. They don't really compare the two, and they don't the harm that can be caused. And I'm not just criticising magistrates, I'm criticising society there. I don't think the society as a whole see road danger in the way, and the way they should see it is it can happen to anybody. So I've been touched by it. A lot of people ask me, are you sort of so passionate about this because you've lost somebody? No, I haven't. A lot of people have asked me, am I stood up for cyclists? No, I'm not. It's because there's harm that gets caused. And I think, so when society starts to think about the risk, the harm to communities, the danger posed by driving like 160 body, that's driving dangerously, but there's some extreme examples which are just so outrageous, and they're not the guys they lose their license for a tiny period of their life. I think if we take
responsibility for your actions and understand that you're going to be punished. That's the key thing, surely, with society. Take responsibility of your actions and know that you're going to be punished. If we start,
you are breaking.
Andy,
you are breaking up a fair bit. I don't know if you can get closer to your Wi-Fi or whatever, but your visual is fine, but your voice.
Take these headphones off. And I'll try and come back.
Okay, try that, mate.
Okay, bear with me 2 seconds.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I'll just put you in the green room while you're. It's all right. So to just try to get it fixed. Harry.
I'm sure you at some point in your career you will have gone out and targeted, for example, disqualified drivers. That used to be one of our things at the weekend. We knew the same people were going and driving disqualified, and so we'd go and target them because they just continue to do it. They get banned and they carry on driving. They drive away from the court, having just been banned.
He was saying was music to my ears. There is because just going to mute it a second. That's it, because it's a bit. What it was music to my ears by saying we're going to get rid of those. The numbers. We went out and we would go on the motorway. We knew that if we blasted 3 speeding tickets, and we would do over 90 in the motorway, blast the 3 speeding tickets, then we could go in town and do the real work, because what we were being counted for had been done. But the time to actually detect, get the intel, detect, wait, and find the disqual driver or the drink driver took time. But it would probably get you 1 little tick. And that was the problem with the system. And what I used to say to people as a sergeant, I said, I don't want your figures to be up the top, because all I know is you're blasting lasers on the motorway. But I don't want you to be absolutely zero either, because you can fall into drink drivers occasionally, but I want you somewhere in the middle there to show that you are getting out and about a bit, and I will defend you all I can because of that. But so it's music to my ears when I heard Andy saying that. Hello, welcome back, Andy.
Thank you. Hopefully that's a bit better. I can hear you fine, but there's obviously some issues on my end, perhaps. But I
think this is good now.
Okay, good. I think the whole thing about I was saying about this applies to policing as well, around the whole culture of road danger versus other types of crime. So I refer to it as road crime. So we introduced a road crime team in London, and it was purposely named, trying to define it as crime. And I think policing has got, you said earlier, Harry, I think it's yourself, around, when you're investigating a murder versus when you're investigating a fatal collision, the amount of resource difference is vast. We've just made a decision which is going out publicly, I think, imminently, around making it, in future that resources come into, so it's not to sort of kick out the people that are currently working there. Of course, they do a fantastic job, but in future, people working in collision investigation around the serious and fatal will be detectives. I think it's trying to recognise the complexity, the challenge, and that whole seriousness of the case. And I think roads policing itself could be resourced so differently nationally, because we look at tackling crime, and the criminals you can take off the road, taking their vehicle, finding other things, weapons, counterfeit currency, stolen vehicles, etc., that we can find through disrupting unwanted people, but also that whole protection from harm piece, because like I say, 1,800 is more than double the amount murdered and subject to terrorism. So it shows you the level of risk that's out there currently.
Yeah,
and all of it. The ones that I went to were literally, I stopped counting at 150, as I say, many a time, but all of them were avoidable, I would say, without looking back. It's pretty much all of them were avoidable. And there's education is one thing, but it is definitely like treating it seriously and getting the public to realise, it could be you. Because the people I've interviewed as offenders have been, I'm just going to, because when I mute you, Andy, it's just because of slight feedback, but it's okay when you talk. Is I'm looking at really normal people, someone's dad with no previous convictions, and he's been nicked for death by dangerous driving because he really messed up in a big way, and suddenly his interview was so much more important than the person in front of him. So that's the key thing, and getting that feeling across to people is the difficulty. It's what the answer is. I mean, I did check the figures in 1990 when I joined, and they were pretty much they were double. There's 4,000 deaths a year. But so what do you think vehicle manufacturers can do now, Andy? Is it do you think where's their aim of what they're advertising, and where should it be, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a really good shout. I think they've got to really push the whole safety agenda. We need to be far more up for using technology. So the one that really sticks out to me is the speed limiter, because I know speeding is such a factor and it's by far, whatever anybody says, and I said there's an issue with data currently, but speeding will be your number one most frequent factor. It's obviously not present in all, but it's present in the majority of fatal crashes. So I think in terms of having speed limiting technology, having things like dash cam fitted as standard, I think that would really help deter dangerous driving, having things like black box technology, things like alcohol interlocks in the future. So using technology essentially. But I did it, as you know, I was doing a run recently, and it was running along. Obviously, we didn't make it a particularly easy run in terms of some of the roads. So one road stood out is the A5. So I was running down the A5, and it's about 18 miles in a row straight down the A5. And what really stood out to me was when you're on the roadside, it's very different to experience obviously in the car. So in the car, it's soundproofed, great, really comfortable. You got your heated seats. It was a particularly bad day, by the way. Rain was beating down. There was wind against all that sort of stuff that made it really awkward. But heated seats, soundproofed, good music systems, very easy to beat, very powerful cars. And I think basically what I'm saying is I think the driver themselves often feel slightly detached from reality. They don't quite recognise the speed and the power of the vehicle. When you're outside and it goes by you really feel the speed and power of the vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that manufacturers having far more focus, and insurers, on incentivising safety, prioritising safety, would have a big impact, I think.
I mean, you just saying there, I remember being on the side of the motorway. Well, it was my office was the motorway in the end, and a lot of the time. And when you got some of these broken down, and they were terrified, especially at night with the rain beating down, bit of wind, and those HGVs trolling by you. Those drivers who could have so easily have just gone into lane 2 to give you space to then come back after you, but they don't. They go by 2 feet away from you. And you're quite right. They're in their little office. This is a thing to get me from A to B. It's an inconvenience. I wish I would always do at B. And they're thinking about their stuff. But if you pop them on the side of the road where they've driven by, they'd probably never do it again.
It's an offence in America, isn't it? I mean, in Florida, where my friend is, if you don't move over, if there's a traffic stop or someone broken down, it's actually an offence. I think some of the cop cars out in America will capture that, and it gets downloaded, and they'll get you. So people will move over and give you space. But you're right; it's a horrible place to be at the side of the road there. I think
cyclists feel. because if you look at the cyclists now, so vulnerable road use, of course. So what happens is, you know, there's in my opinion, based on stuff I see, is there's an absolute what's the word? Almost like an entitlement. The driver feels they've got to get past cyclists because why am I behind a cyclist? Yeah, when actually they often wait at the junction on the lights or whatever just up the road, but they will be prepared to do close pass, isn't it? Is what we call it, but basically really, really close to the cyclist. Often put them at risk for basically zero benefit or 5 seconds benefit, and there isn't that. I mean, if you were like in a queue to go to the cinema, you're not going to necessarily barge straight in. You're going to wait in the queue, but when they're on the road, the driver thinks he might. Not everybody, of course, but a hardcore. I think they've got an absolute entitlement to get by, and they just push it and they're rude with it, and it creates a lot of risk. And if you look at the stats, far too many cyclists die because drivers have gone too close to them. Unfortunately, the impact of it.
Yeah, that is a whole different show on its own. One, I'm not sure I'm brave enough to get into a thing on cyclists. I always say never mention the C word on Twitter. But it's true. But we've got
there's definitely a lot we could talk about there. But
I can imagine. We should get Jeremy Vine on here with you.
That'd be a good show. That, but genuinely, so that just brings it back to
tell us about the
the
money you raised then for that.
So over 50 grand for road piece. Road piece. So people watching, I'm sure will know, but Road Peace are a charity that support bereaved families and seriously injured people from in road crashes. They also campaign for road safety, and they're really stretched like any charity, I suppose, through a pandemic where the fundraising opportunities weren't there. So I ran, as you know,
them on Twitter.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. From the scene of the first ever recorded fatal crash in the UK, which was 1896, up until the National Memorial Arboretum in
1896.
Yeah, that's the first one we've had. And ironically, the coroner gives out in their sort of summary of that hearing, talks about this, and it was like such a shock. They talked about it as if, well, we really hope and expect never to see a fatal crash again. We've had over 500,000 since, you know, so
wow.
So I think, but getting that for Road Peace, I mean, it is game changing for them. But there is going to be, so coming down the line, we're just in discussions now, will be Challenge 2 next year. And I'm really, really confident it's going to be bigger, and we're going to aim for a lot more money. So it's like not a one-off. I want it to be the start of something, really. So
there's a good question back here. What do you think about this? What are your thoughts on self-driving vehicles, Andy?
Yeah, that's Tracy. Thanks, Tracy. I think, like anything, we've got to be really mindful to technology. We can't shy away from it. I think we've got to explore all aspects of that. There's probably really significant safety benefits in the future from it. I think, you know, I was in a Tesla the other day, and I saw some of the some of the benefits potentially in the future for, you know, brake systems and lane discipline and other bits. So I think there are potentially some significant benefits. Obviously, like anything, you've got to evaluate it and take it slowly and make sure you've got all the legislation in place and everything's got to work. But, you know, let's embrace technology, essentially.
Yeah, if you can remove that human error, then hopefully you'll, fingers crossed, if the technology is right, like you say, be able to reduce those deaths further and injuries further. Fingers crossed.
Right. Yeah.
There's a question here. I mean, Presh, I'm sure that Andy's aware of Project Edward, Project Edward, and it's part of Learn to Live. I think I'll be touching on doing something later this year where we'll be looking at a parents one, where you've got parents with teenagers who are just learning to drive, and rather than just teach them yourself and get them out on the roads, Learn to Live is very much, and The Honest Truth is very much about getting the right driving instructor. Not only teaches them when to change gear correctly, but really trains them the ethos behind it and the dangers behind it and how to avoid certain things and whatever. It's a much more rounded approach, isn't it? Those sorts of things. Get them in early, I say. Get in early. Change that mindset. And even empower that passenger. We call it the sacrificial seat, the front seat passenger seat. Because they're the ones in the most danger as the driver steers away from the danger and presents the front seat passenger to the danger, who is normally the one who's killed statistically. So a whole different approach to it, really, isn't it, Andrew? I think
so. And that, as you rightly say, that whole sort of driver education and getting to really young. So I've seen things like Drive Safe, Stay Alive presentations to young kids, absolutely amazing presentations, and the kids themselves often cry because they're that emotional, because it's very impactful from, you go out with your friends to everything through what happens in a fatal collision up until people telling your mum and dad and stuff, and it really is impactful. So I think the drive, so both from a culture perspective, but also then the meet themselves in terms of technical skills to drive, and I think any education is really good. In relation to that Project Edward question, I'm not directly involved, but I am. I know the lead to Project Edward. I am going to be supporting it during the day, but it's very much their project. They, from what I can see, do an absolutely amazing job around it, and it's across Europe and a huge benefit to road safety.
Are you able to answer this one?
Yeah,
Smart motorways. Bit of a controversial one. I thought, do I put it on there, Dave, or stick him on the spot? You know.
Nicola, that's a good question. I'm not directly involved in this. Lincolnshire, where I currently work, doesn't have a motorway, but this is a really, really interesting one. There's obviously back similar to the previous answer. Really, I think we've just got to be really evidence-based to understand it fully in terms of evaluation work around why things are happening. I'm always minded that motorways before smart motorways could be dangerous places. This is obviously about trying to make them safer, but I think obviously we've had some really horrific incidents on smart motorways which devastate the families involved. So it needs to be really fully evaluated, and it's got to come up with some safer solutions for both standard motorways and obviously safer.
Hasn't one of the campaigners against smart motorways just been given an MBE and dedicated it to her child, who sadly was killed in a terrible accident? That's
right, and she's absolutely fabulous campaigner, and really, really talks about her son Dev, who obviously died in that incident. So that's what I say. There's obviously something's not right currently, and they need to really fully evaluate that and understand it and address that. But there's other issues to address around motorway driving as well. So it needs to be a fully considered response, essentially.
Our friend Scotty Bateman, who we've put a couple of comments up, we're definitely going to put you in contact with him. He's an incredible guy. When it comes to sort of risk and that sort of thing, he's an expert, but he's also got some incredible connections in the world of media. So we definitely need to put you guys in contact.
He's very much
a top guy as well.
Very high up in the air industry. He flies jumbo jet still, but that is not just what he does. We know lots of stuff that he does. It's quite impressive. And he's worked at the police thing. He was superintendent as a special, actually. He started first response, didn't he? The first responses. Yeah, it's quite a guy.
Amazing
but he,
guy.
yeah. So, do you think that extra heavy sentences is going to help, or what is the way to actually rehabilitate people who are just habitually put it out of their mind and just think, well, it won't happen to me again, and they're still driving like idiots? What is the way? Is there a magic wand?
Yeah, well, I think I don't think there's a magic wand, but I do think there's some opportunities. So I think, firstly, we should not have an absolute entitlement to drive. So my son, youngest son that is, who wants to learn to drive, has to pass a test to prove that he's safe. Then when you pass that test, you shouldn't just have this absolute entitlement. Oh, well, even if I lose my life, it's only for a short while, even though I might have drove exceptionally dangerous and had the most horrific impacts to families and so on. So we need to remove that entitlement to drive. I think on occasion we should have lifetime bans for driving, and we should be far more receptive to that, or certainly longer bans. I've seen people that have taken a life very quickly get their license back, and I think even recently I saw somebody that had taken 2 lives, still were getting in 2 separate instances, getting their license back relatively quickly. And I find that so we've got to take that and change that. I think so. Things like uninsured driving or driving without tax, we seize your vehicle. Why can't we seize your vehicle if you're driving at 150 mile an hour? We have to prove that concept of dangerous, and that's a very complex legal debate, which I know you'll understand. But I think for things like extreme speeding, we should have more powers. But ultimately, that's all sort of reactive and tackling the dangerous driver post-event. But I do think a much more preventative agenda, like you said, why can't we almost have the equivalent of speed awareness workshop before you get caught? So you start to particularly for companies who drive a lot and almost like that white van driver mentality, where you maybe going a long way down the road trying to raise awareness and prevention tactics and improve driver standards before events happen, essentially.
Yeah. You can't deny any of that. Really, it's all fantastic. I remember we got a primary school involved in the speeding campaign because they contacted us and said they always speed outside the school, and it was great. And then that got us the publicity that we needed, which was brilliant. And the local companies whose trucks used to come past, they made a promise that they would make sure they would check their tracking devices to make sure they were coming in under the speed limit, which was fantastic. Well, I remember stopping a lady, and this probably hits nail on the head. We stopped her for doing 48 in the 30. She was ever so upset. She was, she thought it was unfair and it was dreadful, and she couldn't understand why she was going to get a fine, blah, 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 blah. And at the end, she said, would you mind coming to my village? Because they don't half speed through my village.
Yeah.
So don't do it on my doorstep, but I can do it on other people's doorstep.
Sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
sums it up. And but the other thing, that lady should go to a track day, because I went on a track day with my motorbike. I have never had so much fun in my life. Seriously, it was phenomenal. It was like, wow, and you could just literally furring the tires up, and it was you just realize then, and it helped me really get used to what the bike could do. So, and I had no urge to do that on the public road personally. I didn't need it, because I've seen a fair few motorbike collisions, and they always, those people say, yeah, but it wasn't his fault. He got killed in my mate. It wasn't his fault. Well, what happened? Well, he was going around a bend, and there was like diesel there, wasn't there? So I said, well, probably it was his fault then, because he should have. He's not on a racetrack. Knee down, round a bend, hoping that there's nothing slippery or a big tractor waiting for him, So inevitably it is. It's all preventable. Otherwise, I wouldn't ride a motorbike on the road now.
I think like you're alluding to there is, if you've got if you're on a track, a private track or whatever, you're going to probably develop skills to cope with situations. Whereas most people here in a public environment, obviously, as you say, road conditions vary, and there's other people's are on the road, of course, as well. And I think everybody that they don't operate in the benefit of hindsight, right? But they think they're a better driver than they are. So how many people think they're a really, really good driver, and actually, that they're not? Because I'm not. Do you know what I mean? None of us are as good as we think we are. Yeah. Unfortunately, some people just have that mentality. They're really good, and it won't happen to them, and that's when it goes wrong, essentially, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple of good points coming in. Someone saying why produce cars that can reach ridiculous speeds? Good point. Of course, electric cars now, it's all about acceleration. We've never seen acceleration like it. And then Dave, who's clearly a HGV driver, saying it's not necessarily excessive speed that kills, it's the inappropriate speed for the conditions, which is something that you've already mentioned. I mean, we've just had a rainy spell, first bit of rain we've had in ages, and I've no doubt that the traffic officers were waking up thinking, oh my God, this is going to be one of those days, because the people just forget how to drive to the conditions, don't they?
And also it's ego as well, because as I say, my bike club I join, I love the sort of Southwest bikers are bloody brilliant, because they really respect the towns, villages and things like that. And they sort of, they open it up on our open road, but a lot of our roads, it's just making sure you get the lines right. It's very much egos are left at home. The talk is at the beginning, like if it's too quick for you, you're looking down at 60, 70, to be honest, and on some nice roads, and getting your positioning correct, so your visuals are better than they would be if you're on the wrong part of that road, and just improving your whole riding is very much paramount. And that's the skills of it. And then they say, look, if you don't you dare feel rash, we'll wait there 20 minutes if necessary. It's not a problem. You're here to actually, and so I love that, and that's why I go with them. If there was just a whole bunch of egos, because that's where everyone's got to ride to the conditions of the best rider, and that's where it all goes horribly wrong when they're trying to catch up. And that's maybe sometimes youth could get into it, because my ego now is like, forget it, I don't care. I'm not really good.
You should always be driving as well, shouldn't you? Like you said just now, Harry, that you should always be driving thinking there's a tractor around the next corner. There's a tractor around the next corner. There's a tractor.
Yeah, and I introduced myself as my Southwest bikers, right? I've been riding big bikes for 30 years, but I considered myself an amateur because I've only commuted. And my bike only knows how to go left, left, right. And if it goes left, 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 it won't have a clue what to do. And people come from holiday, they go around Liverpool and the back roads of Liverpool, whatever. Now, wow, yeah, because they know the roads. And they come down to Cornwall, they follow on to a big stream, and they get caught out because they're not used to those bends, or they didn't expect that to come up. You get familiar with your roads. So and that's why beautiful sunny day, blue skies, sunny. I used to say, nice day to die today. And we'd be knowing there'll be a biker.
Yeah. So what, Andy, what can people do? Sorry, I keep calling you Andy. Sir, what can people do? I mean, there's obviously the charities that people can get involved in. We can look out for your next, 9 marathons. What? Yeah. We can look out for your next crazy thing and help you to raise some money. But what can people do? Speak to their MPs?
Yeah, slippery slope now, Andy. Next one.
Yeah. So I think we certainly would want you to sort of firstly drive sensibly yourself and challenge those people that don't. So, I know it's like everybody says it's been quite old hat, but the whole phrase around drink drive, unacceptable, it has been for a generation. I grew up knowing it's unacceptable. My family did the same, etc. We need to make speeding that way because speeding is so similar in terms of the impact it has. So challenging your friends and family around that, driving sensibly yourself, raising things with your MP, with your local police as well, with basically to try and campaign for effective road safety. One of the things I think we would benefit from in the future is something like a road safety commissioner that brings all this together, because we've got so many different, we could reel off a long list now of stakeholders basically in the road safety world. Lots of obviously police forces, lots of activity, lots of it really, really good. But I think if it was more coordinated, it'd be even better. So I think there's something for that in the future. Get a dash cam and help us and report it, because if I go back maybe 3, 4, 5 years, we would get a lot of letters and emails and calls for road safety. Of course, we can't do much because the incident happened. There's no evidence around it. Whereas if you've got it recorded, we can do it. And I think whilst that would help us take action against dangerous drivers, more important is that deterrence impact of, I think it will influence people to drive more safely. So there's those sorts of things really, but fundamentally drive sensibly yourself and encourage others to do so as well.
Oh, Harry, we can't hear you now. I can't hear you, Harry. Oh, was beautiful.
Was that blissful for a moment? Yeah. Come on. Get it over with.
I'll wait for the comments to start scrolling.
They'll all agree with you.
Somebody shut Harry up.
I'm aware that football is starting at 5, so we've got to end up on 5. But it's just to remind people that Andy's the chair of the National Strategic Board for Serious Collision Investigation. So it's completely the main influence across the country on that side of things, and leading road danger reduction, serious collisions and transport crime investigations across London as well, because I know London has major problems, I think, from tourists and people coming in and they sort of look the wrong way and step across the road. We've all done it abroad where we've gone, oh, okay, wrong way. It's that habitual thing. And you meet a London bus, isn't there? And Oxford Street has a terrible history of fatals. I don't know what you do there. What's the answer there?
I think one of the things that London's done really well is because we've talked a lot about really extreme speeds, right? But 20 and 30 mile an hour areas. So we recognised a little while ago that most kill and serious injury collisions are happening in 20 and 30 mile an hour zones. Why is that? Because pedestrians and cyclists, and obviously they're more vulnerable to a collision. So we policed a lot more intensively around those roads. So and that would obviously wrap in a lot of the roads you've just sort of basically alluded to there. So I think moving, if you go back just a little while, and I know football's starting soon, but if you go back a little while, you look at things like probably police and culture didn't really want to enforce 20 mile an hour roads because they're new and but that's really slow. But actually, a lot of you kill and serious injuries happen there. So
there was a few places that started a program. It might be rubbish, but where they made it that it wasn't a pedestrianised zone. The vehicles could still go there, but the pedestrians had more rights. I don't know what the right terminology was. So like people and there as and when they like. So people had to slow down because you were trying to make your way through the crowd. Does that make sense? Was that have any of those programs turned into anything? They talked about doing it here actually where we live.
Yeah, I think you're talking something like lower traffic neighbourhoods there.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a basic personally. Policing isn't necessarily personally. If I speak for myself, I think lower traffic neighbourhoods is a good thing. You've got a much safer environment. You can talk about all the environmental benefits and feel good benefits as well, but from a road safety solely perspective, I think creating zones and infrastructure for people to walk and cycle will massively help around preventing death to vulnerable road users. But yeah, like we talked a lot through this show, but I think a lot of it will be down to infrastructure, better vehicles, more engaged manufacturers, insurers, better leadership, policing, politically, every road safety stuff. But ultimately, the driver's got to take responsibility for their actions. They've got to play their part as well.
And that's why, it's like everything. It's usually a bit of everything. That's why sometimes people say it would be far safer if every car was manufactured with a big 6-inch rusty nail sticking out of the steering wheel, because people would drive a lot more carefully. Yeah. I love this comment. You've all frozen. It's like a poster from Compo, Clegg and Foggy for last. No one take any offence at that. I actually quite like that. and Andy, feel free to be insulted. But that's it.
If there's a man that deserves, I know it's a controversial subject this week, but if there's a man that deserves a QPM, it's Andy. But we won't get into the conversation.
yeah.
Come on when you get it. Come back on when you next do your crazy, loony.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Running thing, and definitely speak to Scotty. We'll put you in contact because he's an incredible guy.
Yeah. Bye everyone. We'll see you next week.
Appreciate it. Thanks guys.
Nice one. Cheers.